The Senior Rehab Project is supported by the Game Changers, a group of motivated rehab clinicians that are crushing mediocrity and advancing care for older adults. You can join this group of people and get access to the private Facebook group, the monthly meetup with article discussions, and have a say in the direction of this movement. Get off the sidelines and get involved. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/Game Changers. Hit me!
This is a Senior Rehab Podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Hey everyone, today's episode uses a word related to ableism, which some listeners may find offensive. This is in the context of a linguistic discussion, but I wanted to add this content warning so that it didn't catch anyone by surprise. We at SRP strive to foster a learning environment for all people, regardless of age, sex, gender, abilities, or any other category. With that in mind, if you have any feedback regarding this or any other episode, please feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or at seniorrehabproject.com. Enjoy today's episode.
Hey there, Senior Rehab Podcast listeners. I'm Tally Spaceman.
I'm Aaron Carey.
And this is Senior Rehab Podcast Prereqs. Hashtag
SR Prereqs. This is the new title that we have come up with. This is through a lot of work talking with the Game Changers, like deliberating with the team. And we feel like that our short segment is not so short. So it's just lying.
And, you know, we don't lie to listeners, we lie to patients. No.
That's the worst. So yeah, we wanted to stop lying to you. And we feel like, what we do is the evidence-based part of the show, and we're looking at research.
You get why we changed the name.
Do you? If you have questions, please feel free to message us on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right, so today's article comes from Twitter, actually. Superstar game changer Meg Lowry from Australia posted this article on Twitter and tagged me. And it was when Tali and I were talking about how we wanted to do this series on ageism. And I looked at it and I was like, this is perfect. Of course it is, because Meg is perfect. Of course,
because Meg is awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Meg. This is excellent. So this article is entitled, When It Comes to Older Adults, Language Matters. Journal of the American Geriatrics Society Adopts Modified AMA Style.
When was it published?
2017.
Oh, recent.
Yeah. So this is, I think it says later in the article, like starting in June 2017, this is what we're doing. So it's like partway through 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was published in the Journal of the American Geriatrics Society. It's an editorial, so there are no statistics. Woohoo!
There's no statistic. I'm the editor. I decide what goes in.
Yeah. I should never be an editor of anything. I'll just be like, kittens.
Well, you're editing all over.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
There's a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah.
Go ahead. It sounded like you wanted to say something.
No, I wanted you to continue.
No. That's it. Good episode.
Good episode. I'm glad we did this.
Glad we had this talk. The introduction starts out by saying the Journal of the American Geriatrics Society, they get a lot of questions about how best to refer to older adults. So what they did is they put this editorial together to clear the air and to set the standard for the future publications of the journal. So they're saying that they're basically adopting the American Medical Association Manual of Style, but also adding modifications. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they also did this collaboration with the Frameworks Institute and the Leaders of Aging organizations.
Did they say what was the purpose of adding this style, or?
Yes, they do. They talk about it later in the article.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. First, they kind of generalize it as the way to talk about the people. So they specify what not to say. And they specifically say to not use terms like the aged, elders, elderly, and seniors. Go ahead.
Why?
Well, apparently, these particular terms connote discrimination and negative stereotypes, which influences evidence-based recommendations. And through their collaboration with the Frameworks Institute and the Leaders of Aging organizations, they determined that the public doesn't even like them. So they partnered with these organizations, and they have found that language, even down to specific word choices, has been a significant obstacle to conveying to the general public and policymakers the advances that we have made in healthcare and aging services. So they're basically stating that the link between the academic world and the rest of the world, like policy and administration and things like that, isn't really great to begin with. So I'm really glad that they're acknowledging and addressing that there's a barrier there.
Okay, yeah, there is a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some words that we cannot use. Like I heard somebody use the word senile for someone who's losing his cognitive abilities.
Right.
But saying elderly is a problem?
Apparently, according to their research on the general attitude of the public and how using words like elderly makes them have more ageist thoughts and like more ageist biases. This is also just the United States.
Of course, you're very offended by words. How could I think that it's anywhere else?
America. So they talk about the public perception of aging, and there are about 5 different perceptions of aging that people generally have. And it kind of goes in line with what we talked about with the aging in Twitter.
Yeah.
The first is that it makes it sound like it's someone else's problem, or they view the aged as others.
Yeah.
So like the elders kind of puts a separation between a person and the elders.
Okay, I get that.
You have something you want to say.
I have so many things I want to say.
Why don't you just say it?
Because I don't want to sound like I don't think language is a problem. Obviously, I think that language is a problem. And the language we use determine a lot of things and a lot of how we deal with problems.
Right.
Or deal with non-problems. But I'm afraid there's going to be a hypersensitivity.
I think that's a fair concern to have about all of this.
And that in the end, I wouldn't have words to describe an older patient.
So they do not only specify what not to say, they specify what we should say instead.
Okay.
So they don't just take it away, they give things as well.
All right. I'll wait till, I think it's always a good method when you have criticism to save it to the end of an article. But I will wait. All right. So there are words that we can't say. Do they specify why we can't say those words?
Yes. So
you did say that in the public eye, it's them.
Us versus them sort of mentality. There are also 4 more perception themes.
Go ahead.
The next one is that aging is undesirable, and people associate aging almost exclusively with decline and deterioration instead of a more holistic sort of process.
To be fair, it is undesirable. It is the closest you'll get to death. Sorry, they associated with decline and...
Right. Only with decline and deterioration instead of like everything else that happens with aging. Along with seeing this undesirable decline, they see that this decline is inescapable and breaking down as inevitable, which we've talked before about how that can lead to a lot of problems as far as people going to their healthcare providers when they have an issue. If they view it as, oh, that's just normal aging, when it's not.
Or keeping their diabetes balanced because they think, oh, I have diabetes, I have nothing to do against it.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue eating candy bars.
I'm just going to salami my leg down.
What?
This is how they do amputations in people with diabetes. You start with a toe, then they go up. It's a salami method.
Oh my God. I've never heard of that.
Really?
They also view it as an isolated thing to deal with, basically not a problem for society to address, and that the family or the older person themselves needs to deal with it on their own. So a more us versus them, more reactive, not proactive. It's also fatalistic, and people tend to dread aging, which can prevent support for solutions that address the problems or opportunities of aging. Like basically out of sight, out of mind, where if we fear something, we avoid it. And this prevents us from taking care of these impediments to health as we grow older. So that's why they say those particular words aren't really... Well, they aren't going to be accepted in the manuscripts that are submitted to this journal because they foster these ageist themes of aging. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Do you hate this so far?
I don't love it. But hate is a strong word.
That's true. Well, now it's on to the things that we should say. So they suggest using the term older adult for persons age 65 years or older. And for the journal specifically, we need to provide a specific age range when making medical recommendations, which I really like.
Yes. Okay, I like this.
Okay, good. That's what it took.
And it just took to be accurate. That's all. It doesn't take a lot to satisfy me.
Our standards are so low. Okay, so that's when you're talking about a specific person or cohort of people. Next, how to talk about the diseases or the disorders or the functional limitations. And this is honestly a lot easier. They suggest that you use person-centered language, basically saying the person before the impairment, which
Yes. It's not an autistic child, it's a child with autism.
Exactly. Or it's not a diabetic, it's a person with diabetes.
Yeah.
It's the person before the disease. They are not diseases. They are people with diseases.
You are not defined by the disease.
Right. Like, I'm Aaron with stupid.
I'm Tally with awesomeness.
Not awesome Tolly.
It's a disease that I can't really shake. When I grew up, my mother used to say, "You're not stupid. The thing you did was stupid."
Oh, your mom was so progressive.
She was. She really wasn't, but she was on some things. No, on some things she really was. And I never understood that as a child, why it was important. And now I really do.
Yeah. I mean, now we see what the alternative is.
Yeah.
So they specify not to use terms that describe people as victims or emotional terms that suggest helplessness, such as a person who is afflicted from or suffering from or stricken with, which reminds me when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in sub-Saharan Africa, the way people would describe diseases there is say, what are they suffering from? Like all of them, ubiquitously. It was very interesting. So that kind of took me back to that time there. Another term that they say not to use are things like euphemistic descriptions, such as physically challenged or special. And there's something I want to bring up. You know what? This might be a good time to bring up the euphemism treadmill. Is this a phrase that you're familiar with or a concept you're familiar with?
No, what is a euphemism treadmill?
Okay, so...
It sounds like something I would use.
Oh, you're going to love this. So it's a term that was coined in 2002 by Steven Pinker, who is a professor at Harvard in the psychology department, in his book called The Blank Slate. And this is where you come up with the ghost in the machine concept versus the uninformed something. Anyway, philosophy, whatever. So the best definition that I found of the euphemism treadmill is from Urban Dictionary, which is a little poetic, might I say. The definition from Urban Dictionary states that the euphemism treadmill is the process by which a pejorative term is replaced by a more politically correct term, only to over time be corrupted and used pejoratively itself until a new term is introduced, upon which the cycle repeats itself. So named because walking on a treadmill gives you the illusion of going somewhere when you're actually not making any progress.
I love this. I love this.
So an example, the best, most common example of the euphemism treadmill in action is the term mental retardation.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. I wanted to say that.
I know.
I wanted to say.
I know.
Also, because I only found out about 3 weeks ago that you're not allowed to say retarded in this country.
Really?
Yes.
Who told you?
Don't ask me how I found out.
I mean, I'm curious, but I respect your choices.
Let's say just that there were a lot of faces.
Tolly. So, mental retardation was a medical term used to replace imbecile or idiot. And mental retardation is in the DSM-4. Granted, it's been updated to the DSM-5. I'm not sure if it's in there. But that's what psychiatrists and psychologists use to diagnose people with mental disorders. This was a medical term. Mm-hmm. Now, it's an offensive term that has been replaced with terms like intellectual disability, which, if the trend continues, will one day need to be replaced to another term. So my point of introducing the euphemism treadmill is one because I knew Tolly would love it.
Yes.
And 2, because language is malleable and changes over time, and I think that's important that we acknowledge this when we're having these discussions about language and political correctness and things like that. So this doesn't negate the efforts to reframe the language that we use, because the language we use still has tangible problematic effects on others. So I'm still going to avoid using the term seniors and choose to say older adult, but with the knowledge that someday that term will probably be out of favor as well if the trend continues.
I think it's a little bit of a trap. I do think you need to be polite and sensitive when you talk.
Yes.
But I maybe it's because I'm from another culture. I find it a little hard sometimes in the US especially.
Yeah, I think we're pretty hypersensitive here. And I think it's fair for you to be like, okay, guys, let's not get hypersensitive.
All right, sorry. I keep interrupting you because this is fascinating. I love it.
Isn't it? No,
yes.
I'm so fine with you interrupting when like you want to say something, because I tend to look at my computer screen and read.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so that was the euphemism treadmill. So then in this article, what I really like about this article is that they not only say, like, this is a problem, we shouldn't do this. They say, here are solutions and here are tools to make it easier in all sorts of ways. The Frameworks Institute, which is one of the collaborators on this editorial, they have a bunch of free tools, and I'm going to post a link in the show notes so that if you want to take a peek at that, which I would highly recommend, you can. So it's called Gaining Momentum. And this tool has information, it has games, it has a guide to anticipating public thinking in conversations about ageism. They have sample communications and all sorts of resources that you as an entity in any context could find value from. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. There's also a video and it's cute. So then from the research that the Frameworks Institute and this group of organizations have done, they have 3 major recommendations for how we are to address this problem of language and ageism. First, we need to redefine aging, which, what do we do on this podcast? Redefine old. Heck yes, SRP. Next, they state that in general, when we're talking to others about any sort of person who has some sort of need that needs to be addressed, a call for justice beats a plea for sympathy. So instead of, oh, woe is them, we can reframe our statements with the concept of a just society strives to treat everyone as equal participants. So like, instead of saying, oh, older adults have poor health outcomes when ageist people are hitting them in the face, we can say people shouldn't be hit in the face. It's the best example I can come up with I should have come up with better ones. That's okay.
It's okay.
I'll figure it out.
It's okay.
So the third recommendation is, instead of saying terms like fighting aging and staying young, we should think of the process of aging as building momentum. And that's why they call their tool Gaining Momentum. So they say in the article that this concept demonstrated a 30% reduction in ageist attitudes, but they didn't really have a citation or anything about that. So I don't know. I'm doubtful. I think that's cool if that is the case, but like, I would want to know how they measured this, who they talked to, and things like that. So then they have a table called A Quick Start Guide to Reframing Aging. And what I'm going to do, Tolly, right now with you is that I'll read this side, which is, instead of these words and cues, you read this side, which is try blank. So instead of using terms like tidal wave, tsunami, and similarly catastrophic terms for the growing populations of older adults,
try talking affirmatively about changing demographics. As Americans live longer and healthier lives.
Exactly. Just like that. So this actually, at CSM, there's a talk called the Silver Tsunami talking about older adults. It's exactly what we shouldn't be doing. Because, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't think that we shouldn't be doing. It's okay to have it in a title. Would you go to? It's not if you would go, because you would. Yeah. But this is a more attractive and it's a title of a show. You know, it's a title of a lecture.
Right. But the thing is, the way I think about it, it's specifically catastrophic. When is a tsunami a good thing?
In a movie.
It's not. What movie?
In the one with Naomi Watts.
What movie are you talking about?
I think there's one, or another blonde actress. No, I mean, I'm sorry, right now, it's a tsunami not because, oh my God, there's a lot of old people, but oh my God, there's a lot of old people and we did not prepare for that.
Sure.
People that were born before 1960, the life expectancy was up to 60 years.
True.
And now we're like, oh my God. It's like preparing for a pregnancy of a one baby and discovering you have triplets. Thank you.
I guess I would call that a tsunami of babies.
Which is an awesome M. Night Shyamalan movie. But you see, it's a tsunami not because of, we hate old people, but listen, we weren't prepared. We need to prepare for a tsunami.
Okay. I think I see where you're coming from, and I think I agree with you.
Thank you.
Like, this is an issue. I mean, yes, we're going to have a lot more older people, but it's because we don't have the infrastructure for it. Like, we're not ready for this.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm with you there. Okay.
Thank you.
I still feel bad. It's fine. That's just my feelings. Okay. So the next one is, instead of using terms like choice, planning, control, and other individual determinants of aging outcomes,
try emphasizing how to improve social contexts. Let's find creative solutions to ensure we can all thrive as we age.
How do you feel about that one?
I think it's oversensitive. Planning, really, instead of planning, or instead of controlling.
I think the idea with this one here is that a lot of people view the plight of aging as like, well, you did this to yourself, you know, or like someone having...
You didn't die in time.
You didn't die in time, or like, you made these choices, you deal with the outcomes. It's like, I'm with you planning. I don't know why planning is in there, because I plan all the time. Does that make me ageist? I don't think so.
Or like choice, really? Like, I understand if it's in the context of, oh, you chose to smoke. Or...
Yes, I think that's what they mean.
All right.
So it like doesn't take into account the different social nuances, like the culture of the time, how everyone smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually a really good way to think about it. Okay, cool. Next, instead of using these words and cues, seniors, elderly, aging dependents, and similar other-ing terms that stoke stereotypes.
Try using more neutral, older people, Americans, and inclusive we and us terms.
Now I agree with that one. It's like, it makes them less of others.
Yeah, and I think all of the... I'll say it in the end. I don't want to say it right now. I'll say it in the end of the...
You won't forget?
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of using terms like struggle, battle, fight, and similar conflict-oriented words to describe aging experiences,
try the building momentum metaphor. Aging is a dynamic process that leads to new abilities and knowledge we can share with our communities.
What do you think?
I'm okay with, and I think it is important not to use fight or battle or struggle when it comes to people, when we talk to people, but when you talk about phenomenon, like...
Sure.
That has to do with, we said, fight loneliness. Or
I see.
I'm afraid that saying... It's almost like and I'm going to be very extreme, it's almost like 1984, the novel.
I see.
That because language is so important, most of the time language is the limits of our thinking.
Absolutely.
We usually think in words. We also think in other ways, but I don't like the censorship.
I see. Yeah, I can see that as well. I think it's, their idea is that when talking about things like aging, like fighting aging, you know, viewing it as something that needs to be fought and beaten.
The only way to fight aging is die. It's the only alternative.
Right. I think with that mindset, then you wouldn't automatically use those sorts of terms to describe the aging experience. Instead of using words like ageism without explanation,
try defining ageism. Ageism is a discrimination against older people due to negative and inaccurate stereotypes.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
I think I've made that mistake where like I didn't really understand what ageism was. And I was like, that's probably ageism.
It is, but to be fair, maybe in a few years we wouldn't have to define ageism. Like, we don't have to define everything that we talk about. I don't stop every conversation in the middle of say, oh, this means
Yeah, like everyone knows what racism and sexism are.
Or like even like I don't need to explain to you functional decline.
No, that would be sad if you did. But I think you're right. I think that with like more PR and more people being aware of what ageism is, like we'll have to define it less.
Okay.
Don't sound so happy.
I'm sorry. I'm moving between. Have you ever seen the movie Inside Out?
No, I haven't seen it.
I feel sometimes like the anger, like the red Louis Black. Okay.
Okay. Instead of making generic appeals to the need to do something about aging,
try using concrete examples like intergenerational community centers to illustrate inventive solutions.
That one I'm on board with. Don't be like, do something.
Yeah.
Like give me something to do.
Yeah. It's like if like a patient came to you and you'll say, oh yeah, do exercise. No, you need to tell them what exercise, duration, fit.
I'm going to do one exercise.
Go with the fit.
Go with the fit. All right. So that's what I have about this article and the language. There was something you wanted to say, but you wanted to wait till the end.
None of those words or the way that people speak about even ageist people, with most of them, and again, it's a personal feeling. It's not a research that I've done. I think that with most of them, it doesn't come from a hating place or from from an anger place. It comes from a fear of this is how I'm gonna be one day.
Yeah.
And it's scary. And I don't blame anyone for being scared from that. So
I mean, considering what the way society feels about aging, yeah, that sounds terrifying. And that's why I think that redefining aging is so important. At least, like, being more honest with ourselves about it.
Unfortunately, I think that we are not as honest with ourselves. And aging, the core value of aging is lost. You lose things.
But there are things, I think it's like the emphasis on things you lose, and it's like I don't really know what you gain. But you gain things. Exactly. You gain more happiness.
When we...
According to the book I'm reading.
Yes, but we're reading the same book. But with childhood to adulthood, you lose things, but you also gain independence.
Yes.
And you gain the ability to make your own choices. You also pay for your own choices.
Yeah. God, my rent. Ugh.
Yeah, or other things I don't want to talk about with the listeners now.
Oh, okay. Not getting heavy today.
But with with aging, it's not clear what you gain.
And even if there are those that know, which I'm sure there are, it's not really being marketed well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that aging has a really big marketing problem.
Yeah,
which is something we're working to change.
I think we should be careful about our language. But I still...
Don't be too careful. Don't be overly careful.
There are some words I'm still going to use. Aged. No, I don't know. Like I do like older adults.
Yeah, older adults.
And that's what I usually use.
Honestly, that's what I'm used to using because that's what Dr. Moffat used in class.
And this is all of my teachers ever used older adults. If we are afraid of words without thinking about them, it's a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like just being afraid of the words because the words are the words and words.
Instead of gerontophobia, we're causing linguistophobia.
Yeah, I bet that's real.
I'm sure somebody said it in a better way, but
still, let's not be gerontophobe or linguistophobe.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's all I have for that article. Is there anything else you want to bring up? Talk about feelings, thoughts?
No, just it's a great article.
I'm glad you like it. So I'm going to
Even if I disagree with some of it, it's a great article.
I love disagreeing, as you and the listeners know. Yeah. So I'm going to post a link to the article in the show notes, along with a link to the Gaining Momentum tool from the Frameworks Institute. If you have a minute or two, take a quick peek at that and see if you can find some useful stuff in there. But other than that, we want to thank the Game Changers for supporting what we do. We want to thank the listeners for taking the time to listen to us. And thanks to everyone who said hi to us at CSM. We had such a great time with you. We're recording this in the past, so we haven't actually been yet, but I know it's coming out
we
after.
are thanking you in the name of future Erin and future Tally. And it's future Tally and future Erin's problem. And we also want to be nicer to future Erin and future Tally, so we're thanking you in their names.
Yeah, they get a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
A lot of things where I'm like, that's a problem for future Erin.
Hashtag my last donut.
Wait, my last what?
My last bagel. It's like, it's a problem for future Tally.
Yes. All right.
Thank you very much, Erin. I'm Tally Spaceman.
I'm Erin Carey.
And this was Senior Rehab Podcast Pre-Rex.
SRP Rex.
And as always, stay funky.
Hit me! Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.